Today I'm focusing on axiological teleology, a theory from Plato saying that the form of good bestows existence upon things. In simple terms, I'm going to argue that the word exists because it is valuable. My talk comprises of three main parts. In the first part, I'm going to focus on Leibniz's question, the question, why is there something rather than nothing? And I'm going to show the importance of the question and it being meaningful. And in the second part, I'm going to focus on the approach to answer that question, the approach of using abstract facts to explain concrete existence. And then I show that a viable candidate would be value facts. In these two parts, I'm borrowing some materials from two of my papers, Much to Do About Nothingness and Deriving Actuality from Possibility, which is published in Philosophia. But in the third part, the research that I'm conducting right now, I'm focusing on some objections to the axiological explanation, and then I'm gonna suggest a modification to overcome those objections. So let me start by Leibniz's question. We can simply suppose that all concrete things in the world vanish altogether. No contradiction seems to occur in case of an empty world. In other words, it seems that the non-existence of the whole world is logically possible. For one thing, the existence of something or other is far from being an analytical truth. Further, arguments for the logical necessity of existence have not been very convincing. Even the advocates of the ontological argument have retreated from insisting that a logically necessary being exists. Therefore, one may sensibly follow Leibniz in asking, why is there something concrete instead of there being nothing at all? I use the term concrete here in the sense of efficient causality. A concrete thing may be a cause or an effect. Despite this, many scholars have argued that Leibniz's question is meaningless or without an answer. Most of them object every concrete thing has a causal explanation inside the world, and there cannot possibly be something that causes the whole world to exist. Every possible explanation, they say, would be part of the whole world. That explanation thus needs another explanation, which would itself be part of the whole world again. That goes on forever. Following Hume, most critics conclude the existence of our world does not need any explanation whatsoever. And notice I'm using the explanation here, the term explanation, in a metaphysical sense, not just epistemologically. In the first place, a meaningful question can simply be without an answer. So it does not follow from having no answer for Leibniz's question that it is meaningless. Second, isn't it still mysterious that the world behaves in such an orderly way? Why isn't there a different order of concrete things in the world? More importantly, there might have been no order, or worse, nothing instead. If it is rational to ask why some or other concrete thing exists, why not demand an explanation for the whole of existence? To be sure, it is logically possible that the world's existence is a brute fact, having no explanation. However, as long as no evidence is provided that the world exists with no explanation, one should suppose there is an explanation. That is a weak version of the principle of sufficient reason, which is accepted by many philosophers. Now that Leibniz's question is an important one, what would be a viable answer to it? It is a mistake to restrict all explanations to causal ones. Many believe that concrete things originate only from concrete things. This restriction stems from the traditional idea that a cause must be homogeneous with its effect. Some evidence, however, shows otherwise. that matter can turn into energy and living organisms can originate from inorganic components. If that is true, concrete realities too might originate from non-concrete ones. We seem to have not enough reason that all explanations of concrete things need earlier concrete things as their causes. The source of the whole existing world might fall outside the category of concrete existence. An abstract fact might explain why our world exists. The latter kind of explanation may be interpreted teleologically. If our world has a special feature, such as extreme simplicity or abundance, it is rational to believe that the world is actual because it has one such special feature. It is extremely unlikely that a special feature in our world arises as a matter of happenstance. Yet, that feature does not need to be instantiated in a previously existing thing. Neither does it need a preceding agent to make it actual. Instead, as Platonists maintain, having some abstract feature or a form might have led something possible into being actual. Leibniz asserts in this respect, from the very fact that there exists something rather than nothing, it follows that in possible things or impossibility or essence itself, there is a certain need of existence. Here, the abstract feature in possibility or essence is not the efficient cause, but the final cause of existence. Because of having some special features, certain possibilities seek being actual. It may still seem very odd that abstract facts explain concrete existence. Nevertheless, the kind of explanation is in fact what many philosophers, theists, and scientists use as well. Most of them don't even know it. Stephen Hawking, for example, takes the highest degree of symmetry involved in the fundamental quantum laws as an indication that those laws must have governed the world. Here, the reason why our world exists is supposed to be an abstract fact, that the fundamental natural laws could be supersymmetric. In other words, the abstract feature of supersymmetry explains why our world is governed by the fundamental quantum laws. As an example among theists, William Lane Craig argues that God's explanation resides in his own nature. He considers God as self-caused, but not in the sense that he is the efficient cause of himself. Instead, the essence of God is, according to him, so perfect that God requires no efficient cause to exist. In this suggestion, God's essence requires him to exist. But is this non-efficient cause, this perfection in God's essence, not an abstract factor that explains why God exists? Here, as well as in many versions of the ontological argument, what really explains God's existence is an abstract fact, that the essence of God is maximally great, good, or valuable. Both Hawking and Craig deny that abstract facts can explain why there are concrete things. Both of them, however, use the same force that they exclude from abstract things in order to explain concrete existence. There are many cases of using this approach, the approach of using abstract to explain concrete in my paper, deriving actually from possibility. Let me now turn to value facts. John Leslie and Nicholas Rescher use the term axiological explanation when the value of something grounds its existence. They both insist that the axiological explanation does not require the mediatory act of an agent, such as God. If the value alone can explain why God exists, as in the ontological argument, why not use value instead to explain the whole concrete world? Leslie and Rescher follow Plato's footsteps in regarding the form of good as what gives existence to the world. Leslie goes so far as using the term God for the creative force of value. Some contemporary theists, also explicitly express a similar approach. God is not a being, but is instead the power of being, the creative ground of existence. Inside all valuable possible worlds, there is some power to exist. However, a world with the most value, according to them, exceeds others in its power and becomes actual. One should notice once again that the power here is not a causal power, but an explanatory power, the power of grounding. The teleology involved here may well be termed naturalistic, a goal directedness without an agent's purpose. While a purpose must be somebody's purpose, a value can be totally impersonal. Here is some evidence. First, the real inherent value of something can be underestimated or overestimated. Second, just as a lawful world, ripe for the existence of free, intelligent beings, is really better than there being nothing, an empty world would be really better than a world full of chaos and agony. In case of nothingness, there would be no agent to determine a value according to some purpose. So the value of a word in itself and without being the value for someone or something may be the sufficient reason for why that word exists. Rescher describes this naturalistic teleology as follows. Reality is inherently disvaluephobic or valuetropic if you prefer, but this transpires only as a matter of a strictly natural process. Preference and purpose have nothing to do with it. The aversion of reality to this value is as natural as the aversion of one magnetic pole to another of the same polarity. Surprisingly, there is no agreement on the features that make a word intrinsically valuable. Leslie's focal point is on ethical value, though he uses that term in a much wider sense than when used for moral actions of agents. While morality may stem from ethics, they are totally distinct. Leslie includes even the word's lawfulness among ethical values. Another important distinction is between something that is valuable in itself and something that has instrumental value. A TV set, for example, is a mere assemblage of valueless parts, but it contributes to something valuable, namely our enjoyment. For something to be intrinsically valuable, according to Leslie, it must be more than a mere aggregation of separate parts. This requirement of unity for intrinsic value resembles Rescher's notion of systemic or cosmic value. Rescher focuses on value of order, simplicity, and variety. Nevertheless, he argues that the combination of cosmic values are optimized only if there is an evolutionary process leading to the emergence and welfare of intelligent beings. Rescher's argument here is quite complicated, so I'd rather skip it here. In spite of these differences, Leslie and Rescher agree that our word's unity and structure contribute to its intrinsic value, so that it must be actual. Even so, the axiological explanation faces many criticisms. If value rules over the world, shouldn't we expect that the world would be full of prosperity and happiness? Why then is instead moral and natural evil everywhere? One might appeal here to a theistic response to the problem of evil, that valuable things are often in contrast with each other, and it is impossible to have all good things in the world. However, even then, we should at least expect that our world would be the most valuable one, the best of all possible worlds. On the contrary, the claim that our world is the best possible world has not convinced many philosophers, not even some theists. Our world could probably be better in terms of both ethical and cosmic values. Besides, some difficulties arise in determining the best possible world. As mentioned before, the overall value of a world is achieved through a combination of several features. In that scenario, more than one combination may lead to the most valuable outcome. Could there be a reason for why one of those best possible words exists and another one does not? Some difficulties as well remain about supposing there is a highest level of value for a word. The overall value of a word may simply be multiplied by multiplying each component that contributes to its value. More importantly, opponents ask, what evidence do we have that value governs the word? Leslie and Rescher reply, the word's lawfulness having a good combination of simplicity and complexity and fine-tuning for intelligent life. However, these are claimed to provide the same amount of evidence for other hypotheses as well. For example, a multiverse might exist in which each world is governed by a different natural law. This makes the existence of every universe the least arbitrary case. In the latter hypothesis, it is not arbitrary that one among those universes has the fundamental laws of our universe. So the emergence of intelligent life by simple laws in our universe may as well indicate that different natural laws govern different universes. Despite these difficulties, one feature of the axiological explanation may be conclusive. It may provide a decisive advantage over alternative explanations. Both Leslie and Rescher argue that only value can ultimately explain existence. An ultimate explanation does not provoke a further why question. If one invokes God's creative act to explain why the world exists, one may further explain why there is God. Likewise, the fundamental laws of our universe or the multiverse may further be explained. On the other hand, facts of value are metaphysically necessary. That means it lies in the nature of valuable things that they exist. Leslie asserts, to ask why some existing thing has value is like asking why redness is nearer to being purple than to being blue. Not even omnipotence could give intrinsic worth to anything. Therefore, no further explanation is needed, according to Leslie and Rescher, for why value obtains. They claim that in explaining existence, only facts of value can escape the explanatory regress. They take the higher explanatory power of the axiological explanation as an indication that it is more likely to be true. But here comes a bigger problem. Many scholars consider God or natural laws too as metaphysically necessary. They claim it lies in the nature of concrete objects that they behave lawfully, or in the nature of God that he exists. So there seems to be no privilege in explaining existence through facts of value. No extra amount of explanatory power seems to be provided through the axiological explanation. Even more, it may still make sense to ask, why does some metaphysically necessary fact obtain? We see in the case of a metaphysically necessary God that it makes sense to ask, why does God necessarily exist? In effect, there are attempts to place the necessity of God in facts of value. Likewise, some advocates of the metaphysical necessity of natural laws demand an explanation for why those necessities obtain. If the metaphysical necessity of God or natural laws need to be explained, one might as well wonder, why does that which has maximal value necessarily exist? Some attempts to place the necessity of value facts in God further confirms that metaphysical necessities may need explanations. To be sure, some facts being metaphysically necessary means no alternative fact is really possible. Yet it does not entail that no other fact forces the first fact to obtain. For example, physical objects have no alternative other than to attract each other. But there are still some facts, namely the laws of quantum mechanics, that explain why objects must attract each other. As another example, Created things, according to some theists, exist with a kind of necessity. Still, a metaphysically necessary creator explains why created things must exist. In an explanation, in fact, we are not trying only to show why something is not otherwise. The attempt is instead mainly on showing why something is as it is. Therefore, metaphysical necessities, such as value facts, might obtain by virtue of an explanation. Here, I propose a modification to overcome the latter objections. What does motivate one to insist necessary facts cannot have explanations? That is the fear of getting stuck in explanatory regress. Blackburn asserts, if a necessary truth is explained by another necessary truth, then we have not explained its necessity. We have simply transferred its necessity elsewhere and started off on a regress of necessary truth. To avoid regress, many metaphysicians are forced to accept brute necessities. To avoid bruteness, on the other hand, many put in extra effort to explain metaphysical necessities. However, those explaining facts may have further explanations. No alternative seemed to remain other than a regress or an ultimate brute fact. In any case, both falling into an explanatory regress and adhering to brute necessities seem to be implausible. There is nonetheless one way out of this dilemma: to accept that some metaphysical necessities are literally self-explanatory. By all means, there is a general prohibition against self-explanation. To think that at least nothing logically contingent can explain itself is widely presupposed. On the contrary, one may ask, is there actually a reason that any kind of self-explanation must be refuted? I respond negatively to that question. Some law or principle may really explain itself by being an instance of itself. Consider, for example, the sentence, every sentence of exactly 8 words is true. By having exactly 8 words, the latter sentence is an instance of itself, but that sentence is obviously false. Now consider the principle, all possible words exist. That principle can be both true and an instance of itself. For the obtaining of all possible words is itself a possibility. Nevertheless, it is simply against one of our fundamental convictions, that the future resembles the past. If all possible words exist, it's more likely that our inductive inferences will actually fail. It's way more probable that we live in one of the infinitely many chaotic worlds, those that are the same as our world to the present moment, but will behave chaotically from now on. A reason is missing as to why we live in this world of regularities. The evidence from our world, therefore, refutes the principle that all possible worlds exist. Instead, consider the principle all valuable possible worlds exist. It is an instance of itself because the existence of all valuable possible worlds is itself a valuable possibility. This suggestion conforms in a way to the axiological explanation. Suppose we have enough reason for accepting that facts of value explain existence. Namely, there is a force in the nature of good things to exist. Shouldn't we accept then that all good things exist in separate worlds? The existence of many good words seems to outweigh the state of there being only one of them. A state consisting of all good words may even be considered as the best of all higher level possible words. If value rules over existence, then all valuable words may separately be actual in a higher level world, a meta world. Even more, different combinations of valuable words may make other valuable meta words. A self-explanatory axiological explanation can win over other explanations of existence, because all other explanations seem to end in brute facts or explanatory regress. That hypothesis has other advantages as well. If all valuable possible words exist, there is no need to point only to the best possible word. All candidates for the most valuable word can exist separately. Besides, without any further difficulty, one can accept that we don't exist in the best of all possible worlds. We may be living in one among many actual good worlds. Thus, the problem of evils in our world is simply resolved. In addition, we can rely on our inductive inferences without finding afterward that our world behaves differently from the past. That is because some level of orderliness, having unity and structure, is required for every valuable possible word. The axiological explanation can therefore be compatible with our conviction that the future resembles the past. To conclude, I argued in this article for axiological teleology. They claim that the world exists because it is intrinsically valuable. This hypothesis has the merit of answering a question that is not suitably answered by others. And that question is one of the most fundamental questions of all. Why is there anything concrete? By all means, the world might simply have happened to exist. But if some fact explains why the whole world exists, that explanation must reside in the realm of abstract facts, since no regress of concrete things whatsoever can explain why the whole concrete world exists. One main candidate for an abstract explanatory feature is the word's value. Only through the word's value can one provide an ultimate explanation for existence. However, value facts should not be regarded as inexplicable. Just as many necessary facts have explanations, so too might facts of value be further explained. Despite this, facts of value may not fall into bruteness or explanatory regress as other necessary facts do. Facts of value can be self-explanatory. The fact that all valuable things exist is itself among valuable things. So, if our world exists because of its value, then all other valuable worlds must exist. The axiological explanation, so interpreted, does not fall into explanatory regress. Neither is it a brute fact, is a brute inexplicable fact. By virtue of its explanatory power, therefore, one might prefer the axiological explanation to other explanations of existence. To be sure, the benefit of self-explanation is not the only reason for accepting the axiological explanation. Independent evidence as well confirms that value might explain why the world exists. The evidence is that our world has simple laws and is fine-tuned for intelligent life.